Hi, Bill. You're Larry, huh?
Good evening, this is Dr. Paragini. I am here at Grace United Methodist Church. There is going to be a photo presentation and discussion on the latest on Palestine. It's not unlike what I streamed earlier this month over at Eucharistic Intentional Center, where first some talked about Egypt and the second person talked about Palestine. So there will be two sets of slides. One about Gaza and the other about the West Bank. The people are still rolling in.
She was at this meeting the other day.
This is sponsored by Methodist Activist Organization,
We're good.
the American Friends Service Committee.
Don't feel obligated, you know. Huh?
I'm trying to have more than I I may have to eat one eventually just so they don't feel
I got a northern oversupply for my birthday a couple of days ago. There's Bill has been passing them. I like chocolate chip cookies and good sacrifices.
Yeah, cookies are Monday, Wednesday, Friday.
ice cream.
Yeah, or sugar.
Hello.
But you're limited to 2 cookies. 0, 1, or 2. You can't have more than 2.
That makes sense. That's best.
If you take the 2, that's what we're doing.
I remember the cookies I had usually small.
No, they're very good.
I told you my dad was there for many years.
Matter of fact, I sit there, his dad used to sit quite a bit. The same table.
I don't think
But his dad. I don't ever remember being there. All right. Well, didn't John and Laura come over a while? They still do.
They are, there's coffee and cookies. I'm going to go get some.
It's nice, huh? It's tough chicken.
We moved to Beaverdale State.
Good problem. Well, Eloise,
I needed some help taking care of it. It turned out much. No, they don't. I'm not, you know, Look at the clouds and the sun and the trees. We're now on the first floor, but we're looking at
Yeah, we're in the parking lot.
We're like in the parking lot. I know, that's sort of close to.
but they are very friendly. Plenty of good people.
Trade one thing for another.
Phases in life, you
You get pretty philosophical with it. Phases in life, everything else, you know, like it.
Yeah, you have.
Actually, it's King Arthur, though.
She's got an agreement to bring online and to learn about Paris and it's quite a process. Yes, yes.
That bud went down really well.
I've never talked to her.
Let's see,
People are getting their goodies, and more people are coming in. So we'll get started in a few minutes. There was an event over there not too long ago that I went to. Over at the Eucharistic Intentional Center. There was a guy first talking about the situation in Egypt, and then the next guy talked about the Palestine. So I missed the beginning of it. So I got the last half of the first guy. I got the last half of his stuff, and then the second person I got all of his. That's an award dinner. The Catholic workers. I hook up with them quite frequently for some of their actions. And our mosque sends them food sometimes. During Ramadan, we send them a lot of food. Yeah. So I made a couple of the food runs myself. It's a little harder when you do it by bus, so a couple of times I cabbed it.
Good evening. Well, what a great turnout. We thought on a Friday night we'd be lucky if 5 people showed up. So thank you all. Help yourself to treats in the back. There is also olive oil for sale. We'd love to sell you some good Palestinian olive oil. So we can do that when we're done, and glad you're here. My name is Christine Anders, and I am the Minister of Discipleship at First United Methodist Church downtown. And last September, I led a group of 18 to Israel and Palestine for a 2-week mission trip. And several of them are here, so would you just wave if you traveled? All right. Woo-hoo. So we want to share with you a little bit tonight about the plight of the Palestinian people. I am not claiming to be an expert on Middle East peace issues in any way, shape, or form. And I don't think, John, would you call yourself an expert either? Okay. So that's my disclaimer. I'm not an expert. I'm only going to share with you what we saw and experienced. So, let's start. You know, I was a little discouraged about, not long ago, we went to speak to our General Conference delegates about divestment. And I came home and I was really discouraged, and I happened to have a friend who was visiting with me for the weekend. And she said, well, how did it go? And I said, I'm discouraged. And she said, well, remember Proverbs 18:17. The one who first states a case seems right until the other comes and cross-examines. You have all heard the first case. I'm here tonight to give you the second case and to cross-examine what you've heard. So I'm going to just start out by talking about U.S. media bias. I know none of you probably think that the media in the United States is biased, but let me just show you a little fact. This is from the Oregonian newspaper, the largest newspaper in the Northwest United States. It's a summary of their editorials for 1 year. Almost, 83% of their editorials had the Israeli narrative, is what you heard. The Palestinian narrative was never expressed. There was 17% that was neutral, not one way or the other. So I think this just goes to show you how biased the media is, and that's just not the Oregonian, that's every newspaper and media outlet in the U.S. So I just want to share some facts with you before we start. 1 in 3 refugees worldwide is Palestinian, 6.5 million. There are 263,000 Palestinians displaced internally within Israel. The average income for Israelis is $30,000. For Palestinians, $3,000. Palestinians cannot get permits to build or repair their homes or to dig wells, even on their own property. More than 70% of Palestinians live in rural areas that do not have access to health facilities. And if they do have access, oftentimes they're held up at checkpoints and can't get to them. There's been a 100% increase in home births and 56% increase in stillbirths due to not being able to travel. And 100% increase in the number of Palestinians seeking mental health services. And most of the new cases are children. Excuse me.
The children seek.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the history. This sign says Nakba Day, 15th May 1948, the day when Palestinians were expelled from their homeland by the Zionist Israeli occupation. So I want us to go back in history a little bit. Certainly all of us know that after World War II, the Jews had experienced terrible persecution. What happened to them was awful, and no one here would say any different. But they needed to find a place to put these Jews. So they decided, the UN in 1948, that they would create a new homeland for them in Palestine. Now, the problem was, Palestine was just not an empty vacant lot sitting there waiting on somebody to come and move in. There were already people called Palestinians who were living there. So now we have a big influx of people coming in to take over the land that had belonged to these people. Muslims, Jews, and Christians who had lived together for a long time in actually relative peace. Then, when the Jews came through the occupation, they went in, they moved people out with the promise that maybe they could come back to their land. They bulldozed many of the homes, and that promise was actually an empty promise because they have not, many of them, not been able to return home. So I want to just show you, this is just a map. The big orange piece on the right is called what? The West Bank, right? Because it's on the west bank of the Jordan River. This little strip down here is Gaza. And John's going to talk about his trip to Gaza in just a few minutes. But do you see all the little black dots? Those are all depopulated Palestinian villages. So at one time, those villages were thriving, going concerns. And after the occupation began, those were all depopulated. So I'm going to let you talk for just a minute here about Gaza.
Okay.
Well, thanks for coming tonight, everybody. My name is John Craig. I work with the American Friends Service Committee, which is a Quaker organization here in Des Moines. We're a worldwide organization. We have staff in Gaza, in the West Bank, in Israel, and we've been there since the 1940s. So, go ahead. Okay. So this is I was lucky enough to go on an AFSC staff delegation, again last September, about the same time the Methodist Friends went. And we were about 10 people staff people from all around the U.S. About half of our delegation were Latino staff. One person's African American. And I think this is a picture of us as we are entering into Gaza. We were there in Palestine, Israel for about 10 days. We were only in Gaza for 1 day, so it's a little bit of our trip, but that's the unique part that I can speak to. One of the things that really struck me throughout our trip was just how both racist and militarist was Israeli society. And this was it really came home to us every time we passed through a checkpoint. Every time we went through any kind of security barrier, the Latino staff, the one African American staff were detained, questioned, grilled, and we white staff sailed right through, no problems whatsoever. And so that, I never felt anxious or concerned when I was in Palestine with Palestinians, but with the Israelis, with the submachine guns at their side and their fingers on the triggers, always made me very nervous. So go ahead, next slide. When you enter into Gaza, there are several checkpoints that you have to pass through, and then this is a picture of basically an outdoor cage that you have to walk about a third of a mile, get from the first Israeli checkpoint to the first Palestinian Authority checkpoint, and then you take a little cab to get to the Hamas checkpoint. So the whole process maybe takes about 3 hours. It's very difficult for Americans to get into Gaza. I will mention that David Drake, a Des Moines psychiatrist and Quaker, just wrote an article this last week in the Des Moines Register. He was there for 10 days with a physicians group, and I recommend that article to you. I've got some copies with me. So this is in Gaza City, and it's a neighborhood of Gaza City that was very heavily destroyed in 2014. This was I don't know if you can look closely. I don't know if this picture shows that there are people that live in buildings such as this and are still, trying to salvage and recycle what they can from these buildings. But this was an entire neighborhood that had buildings that looked like this. Very, very difficult to see. Again, this was a result of an Israeli attack, aerial, naval, ground assault on Gaza in 2014. It killed 2,200 Palestinians, 550 of them children. And there's still very little rebuilding being done in Gaza because of the blockade. Building supplies are almost impossible to get a hold of, so people in Gaza are very good at recycling materials, and they're remarkable people, resilient. So this is another picture of that, and here's a young boy right here. It's kind of hard to see, but that was certainly moving to us. This is one evening we had a chance to visit with a group of young writers who contributed to a book called Gaza Writes Back, and they've done tours of the United States speaking about their work. This group is primarily young women who work in this, and they write in English, which is interesting, and they write fiction. And this fiction is sort of writing is a way to express and to some of the difficult things that they've gone through. And so it's very interesting to hear their stories. One of the stories was about a brother who was shot by an Israeli soldier, was left to die, and on his cell phone called his family and was talking with his family as his life was expiring. And one of the things they told us is that many of the young children in Gaza are named after older children who've been killed. So, go ahead. This, one of AFSC's programs in West Bank and in Gaza is called Palestinian Youth Together for Change. And in this case, by youth, we're talking about young adults, that is, people older than college students. But it's a chance for young adults to come together and talk about their dreams, their visions, their hopes. One of the ironies is that many Gazans are very well educated, but their employment opportunities are very, very, very scarce. And so, and also travel is very difficult. And so the mobility which we take for granted, the ability to travel hundreds, thousands of miles freely, is very, very much restricted for people in Gaza. And so we had a chance, we spoke with these young people for a couple hours, and then at the end, a lot of it was very heavy and intense. At the end, someone cued the music and everybody jumped up and started dancing, and it was just like, boy, we could really do that sometimes too when we're facing tough things. Go ahead. On the right here is a man named Faraz. He's an AFSC staff person in Gaza. The man on the left is a small business owner, and this is one of AFSC's programs, is helping small businesses develop and do what they can. This gentleman is a metal worker. So as we were looking at several of these destroyed buildings, people are salvaging what they can from the buildings in order to build new ones. This is, I like this picture. This is a young guy, of course, just shaking the hand of Khadijah, who's an AFSC staff person from Atlanta. And there's a lot more to say. That's just kind of a quick little brush through. Oh, that's pretty good. I will just finish by saying that the day before I left for Gaza, listening to the radio, and a UN report came out that said in 5 years Gaza will be uninhabitable. 95% of the water is undrinkable. They only have electricity about 4 hours a day. There are some people who argue that Gaza is uninhabitable right now because of the blockade, the siege, the lack of materials. Gaza it's a tiny little strip on the Mediterranean. It's about 25 miles long, maybe 3 or 4 miles wide. It's surrounded by a wall on the land part, of course. The water part is a blockade on the water. But it's been referred to as an open air prison. And if you approach the wall, you're going to get shot. And it's a tough place.
All right, let's start talking a little bit about settlements. These settlements are illegal according to international law, and yet the Israeli government continues to build these settlements. They are Jewish-only communities that are built on Palestinian land for which they have never been compensated. These communities have electricity and water 24/7. We visited a small village called Wadi Fukin. And last week, several of you who were here, there was a young man, Fahmy Manasra, who was here from Wadi Fukin and spoke. This little beautiful village sits in a little valley. They grow lots of beautiful fruits and vegetables. And yet on both sides, they're being surrounded by these settlements that are just infringing on their space. These settlements, these are the ones outside Wadi Fukin. Periodically, they open up their sewage pipes and dump all their raw sewage down into the village, which oftentimes makes their fields, they can't use them any longer, taking away their livelihood. They often come down and take ritual baths in their springs without asking for permission. They oftentimes close off the road in and out of Wadi Fukin so that they can't get their produce to market. It's a bad situation. If you see here, it says construction of new homes by Israeli squatters in the West Bank increased by 70% in 2013. There are now 515,000 Israeli squatters in the West Bank. And Jews from all over the world are being paid to immigrate to these settlements. And I was surprised at that, but when I came back from my trip, I went down to Walgreens on 31st and Ingersoll to get my photos printed. And this young man who was printing them, he said, "I hope you don't mind that I'm looking at your photos." And I said, "No." And he said, "Are these from Israel and Palestine?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "Boy, those Palestinians get a raw deal." Well, I was just kind of surprised, and he said, "You know, just last week there was a young couple in here that came in to get their passports." And I said, "Oh, are you traveling?" And they said, "No." They said, "We just got a big check and we're moving to a settlement in Israel." So, they're even taking them from Des Moines to settle in these settlements. Home demolition is often just punitive, it's just kind of random. Palestinian homes destroyed in East Jerusalem and the West Bank. You'll notice in 2014 there were a little over 1,100. In 2015, 77. But since 1967, there have been 48,488 homes and businesses destroyed. This is also in Wadi Fakim. This is a little playground and a soccer field that the United Methodist Church is in the process of building. There's a little slide and some little swings over here. This is not finished, and yet they're under demolition orders. They went out one day, and on the soccer field there were 2 rocks with a piece of paper stuck in the middle, and they looked at the paper and said that to stop construction, that this was now under orders to be demolished. Now, I'm sorry, but I never saw a 5-year-old on a swing or a 15-year-old who was playing soccer who was much of a security threat. So they thought, well, maybe if we get a sign with the United Methodist insignia, that will discourage them from wanting to demolish this soccer field. So they worked and worked and worked to get permission from the United Methodist Church to be able to use that, and it finally came, and they had a sign put up. And so this is now at the soccer field, and so far, so good. This is just a picture. You'll see this, I think there are some cards over here with this on it. But this is the loss of Palestinian land from 1946 to 2015. If you look on the left picture there, Palestine, all that green area was considered Palestine. Then we go to the UN plan in 1947, and you see they've kind of carved out, like the West Bank, and Gaza even looks a lot bigger there. Then, from 1949 to 1967, you can see it continuing to shrink. Now, in 2015, look at what's left of Palestinian land. Very little. Now, it would be hard, in my mind, to get another state, the Palestinian state, a 2-state solution out of what's left. There's not enough contiguous land to be able to put together a country. Unless the Israelis give up some of the land, which I'm not going to bet on. So we wanted to go through some checkpoints, just to see what it was like. This is, the one on the left is in Bethlehem. And it was a kind of a holiday, so there were very few people. And we just kind of, with our American passports, pretty much sailed right through. On the right is the checkpoint in Hebron, where we visited. I put this slide in just to show you, do you see the dark blue line? That is the separation wall. The wall that they have built to keep the Palestinians where they belong. And you can see how it makes big entryway into Palestinian land. It's not just around the border of the West Bank. It keeps kind of encroaching into their property. Here we have the separation wall. It's currently about 403 miles long and 25 feet high. And there are firing posts about every 200 meters. Now, one day when we went back into Bethlehem, we could tell there had been a little bit of trouble. We saw a lot of young men with their faces covered, and there had been some rock throwing. Well, come to find out that day in the Knesset, the Israeli kind of government, they had decided to try to pass a bill to allow snipers in the towers to shoot even young children. testing. Well, that kind of aggravated these young Palestinian adults, as you can imagine, and so there was some rock throwing going on. This is the checkpoint at Bethlehem, number 300 on the right. See how nice and pretty it looks compared to this one that's all covered with graffiti? Anybody can guess why that one looks so nice and pretty?
It's on the Israeli side.
No, the Pope had just been there. We want it to look pretty when the Pope comes, so it doesn't look like this terrible thing that it really is. Now, this is not a picture I took, but I found this picture. And from what everyone tells us, this is the description. If you're lucky enough to have a permit to be able to work in Israel, you have to go through a checkpoint if you live in the West Bank. Oftentimes, they go and line up at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning because it takes them that long to get through security to be able to go to work. Now, they can't drive, so they have to have like vans and things on the other side of the checkpoint to take them to their work because they're not allowed to drive their own cars over into Israel. Sometimes you're made to strip down to your underwear. Now, how humiliating would that be? We went to a conference in Ohio 2 years ago now, called Walking with Palestinian Christians. And there was a young Palestinian man there who said, I never take my children anywhere with me because I don't want them to see me be humiliated. Terrible way to live your life. So, if you have a yellow license plate, you can just drive wherever you want because you have an Israeli car. If you have a white license plate, you are restricted to driving on Palestinian roads. Sometimes you have to go way out of your way to get where you're going because you can't get on that nice 8-lane superhighway to get where you want to go. Can you guess which one is the Palestinian road?
The crapped out one.
Yeah. Okay. When we were in Jerusalem one day, we were looking up and we saw this big blimp, and I thought, well, that's probably not the Goodyear blimp looking at a sporting event. And I asked the guide, and he said, oh no, that's the surveillance blimp that flies over East Jerusalem all the time, keeping track. So they're never without someone watching them. You know, when you live in a desert, water is a real issue, as you can imagine. Palestinians receive 20 liters of water a day. Israelis, 451. You can see some Palestinian children here trying to bottle some water coming out of a pipe. Where the Israeli settlements have enough water to fill their swimming pools and plant pretty gardens. Here we have some children in play in Gaza, and some children at a settlement having fun in the water. The Israelis have destroyed some 800,000 olive trees, some by the military and other by Jewish settlers who come in and just want to uproot them. You know, olives are the basis of the Palestinian economy. And we have some wonderful Palestinian olive oil back there to sell. So tearing up these trees is a way to erode the economy of the Palestinian people. Oftentimes the wall even cuts off farmers from their land. They stand on a ladder sometimes to look over at their land and see how it's doing. And then the thing is, if you don't work the land for 4 years, then it becomes Israeli land. But if you can't get at it to work it, it makes it a little difficult. So let's talk a little bit about the legal system. Palestinian children as young as 8 can be arrested. Here you'll see this Israeli soldier with some of the young people that he's rounded up. Now, the death of any child is terrible. But we hear about the number of Israeli children that are killed, but we seldom hear about the Palestinian children. And I just wanted to show you visually, the green are the number of Israeli children that have been killed since 2000. I think the biggest year was what, 45 in 2002. In 2014, 541 Palestinian children were killed. So there's a big discrepancy, but we never hear about those children. So this differing legal system, if you are an Israeli, you are tried for your crime in a civil court. If you're a Palestinian, you are tried in a military court. If you're Israeli, you must be brought before a judge within 24 hours. If you are a Palestinian, you can be held and interrogated for up to 8 days. If you are Israeli, you must be able to see a lawyer without any delay. If you are a Palestinian, they can keep you for 90 days without seeing a lawyer. Currently, there are 5,621 Palestinians who are political prisoners and detainees. The Israelis, there are none. The Palestinians aren't holding any Israelis. Everywhere you go, especially in Jerusalem and other places, you see a lot of Israeli military. So what is the U.S. role in all of this? Our hands are not clean. The U.S. has vetoed 42 United Nations Security Council resolutions that were related to Israeli violations of human rights and international law, and violations of the Geneva Convention in regards to the treatment of people living under occupation. So every time the rest of the world brings up and they try a resolution to call the Israelis to their senses, the U.S. vetoes it. The U.S. is the primary supplier to the Israeli military of advanced weaponry and violates our own laws, the Arms Export Control Act, that prohibits us from selling weapons that are used against civilians. And here we go again with the U.S. mainstream media, through its one-sided reporting, is complicit in Israeli war crimes. So, we have some work to do with our own government as far as trying to bring some justice for the Palestinians. Here you can see there has only been one UN resolution that targeted Palestine that's been brought. There have been 77 that have been brought against the Israelis. Now, we saw some rock throwing and some slingshots, but if you look at the Israeli military, they're pretty well equipped, thanks to us. Now, if this doesn't make you shake your head, I don't know what will. $10.2 million a day in aid to Israel the United States gives. What can we do with that money?
Oh, a whole lot.
A lot. A lot. Free college. Where have I heard that? Yeah. So what can we do? And I'm going to skip this because Kathleen's going to talk about that in a little bit, so we'll go on. But I want to talk just a minute about 3 companies that we are trying to get. I don't know how many of you are United Methodist, but if you are, pay attention. We are trying to get the United Methodist Board of Pensions and Health Benefits to divest from 3 specific companies. One of them is Motorola Solutions. Now, the reason that we want them, that's all right. The reason we want them to divest from Motorola is because of a product called Moto Eagle, and it's a surveillance system that they build. And it's a virtual fence of radar and thermal cameras and communication devices that are meant to control and watch Palestinian movement. Caterpillar sells bulldozers to the Israeli military to be weaponized and used in the destruction of homes and olive groves. Now that doesn't look like a nice little caterpillar that you see, out on the highway doing work. And the other one is Hewlett-Packard. And Hewlett-Packard is working on a biometric ID system that will be installed at Israeli checkpoints in the West Bank and Gaza. And it's meant to deprive Palestinians of freedom of movement. And they're looking at being able to do it with an eye scan. So these 3 companies we are asking the United Methodist Church to divest from. In Matthew, we read, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called the children of God." And in Matthew, again, "In everything do to others as you would have them do to you. This is the law and the prophets." I would hardly call what we're doing "do to you as I would want to be treated." And finally, from Matthew, "You shall love your neighbor as yourself." Now, we learned, when I wrote this, this came from Jewish Voices for Peace, and it was sent out in an email that said, "We learned this morning that the United Methodist Church's Board of Pensions declared the 5 largest Israeli banks off limits and has divested from the 2 that it held in its portfolios due to their deep involvement with financing illegal settlement building in the occupied Palestinian territories." The UMC is taking a great step forward. So we've got, we've divested from some things, but we've still got to keep on them. And they're getting a lot of pushback, as you can imagine. They're getting a lot of people saying, "Don't you dare divest," And so they had people sign the petition for this, and they said, "If we get over 10,000 signatures, we will hand deliver them to the Board of Pensions." And they had way over 10,000, and they did take them and hand deliver them in Evanston or wherever they are. And they were very grateful for the support because they have been getting so much flack for this decision. So they need to know that we thank them for that and support them when they do something that we think they should be doing, and not just leave them out there hanging. So, well, we have our work cut out for us, and I thank you for coming to hear a little bit about what we saw, what we experienced, what we feel needs to be done. And I'm going to turn it over to Kathleen now from AFSC, and she's going to talk a little bit about what you can do.
Christine, I'm wondering if you would like to do questions first,
Oh.
a little bit,
Up to you. Sure.
and then I will hand out some.
You have questions for me or for John? Yes.
I noticed that there wasn't any discussion anyhow about politics. We have one party that might be more guilty than the other, such as
Well, to be honest, the Democrats aren't all that great either. If you were to question Mrs. Clinton and Senator Sanders, you would find that they are not on board. So I'm saying, no, one party is not really much better than the other. Am I being fair, Eloise? And, yeah.
Hillary is
I know, and Hillary's gonna get a letter from me on United Methodist Stationery. I'm working on that letter, but it's gonna take me a while to get it tweaked just like I want. But it's gonna come from First United Methodist Church Stationery. I'm gonna call her to account. Our ambassador. Yeah, she must have gotten a letter from me. I'm pen pals with all these people now.
They don't make those decisions themselves.
No, somebody's telling her what to do.
Do you know if there are very many Palestinians living now in the Israeli areas? And where are they located?
She has the
Well,
Palestinians
there are some
living
that are
inside
refugees within Israel.
territory. Israel
Some of them live in refugee camps. But I don't, you want to comment, John?
I think this is the one that passed the state government committee yesterday.
I mean, there are Palestinian citizens of the state of Israel. There are also, as I understand it, at least 50 different Israeli laws that discriminate against Palestinian citizens of Israel. So we didn't talk about this a whole lot. There's a tremendous fragmentation of the Palestinian experience. So it's very much one thing to live in the West Bank. It's another thing to live in Gaza. It's another thing to live within Israel. Another thing to live in the diaspora and the refugees camps in the Middle East and many thousands of Palestinians who live in the United States. They're very different experiences across that spectrum. But Israel is often lifted up as this wonderful democracy, but again, there are at least 50 laws that discriminate against Palestinians who are Israeli citizens.
including those who serve in the Knesset.
Any other questions?
How did it become so lopsided and unfair? I mean, that's probably a big long answer, but I mean, I just watched this and I don't understand it. I'm just so frustrated.
My thinking, I'm only speaking for me, because I told you I wasn't an expert. I think that after World War II, there was a huge amount of guilt. And that guilt still goes on today. We feel guilty about what happened to the Jewish people, and so we have, I would say, to put it mildly, overcompensated. There was an interesting article that we saw just on the bus when we were going to the airport to Tel Aviv, and it said something about Israel needs to stop playing the victim. They're long past the victim stage now. So that's my feeling, and then, even today, I had to laugh. I was watching TV for a little bit, and I was watching the Waltons on INSP. I don't usually watch INSP, but I like the Waltons. And there was a commercial with all these Jewish people in Jerusalem lined up to get food boxes. And for $25, I could pay to feed this Jewish person in Jerusalem. And it was all, they are so discriminated against, and there's all these poor Jews who live in Israel, and, but for $25, and I can help them. So, Israel, you just read the paper, Israel's our friend. Israel's our friend. And there's some other stuff going on too with, I think, I don't know, that presence in the Middle East that we can kind of be really friendly with. Yes, sir.
I'd just like to
Please.
one of the ways in which Israel has a special relationship with the United States is it's been willing to do a lot of the U.S.'s dirty work for it. In Central America, Israel helped provide arms and weapons to death squads when the U.S. was under pressure from Congress not to do so. The U.S. did the same thing to Israel. Israel did the same thing to support arms and weapons to South Africa under apartheid. So Israel, not only being sort of a U.S. outpost, a military outpost for the United States in the Middle East, it's kind of helps with some of the dirty work that the U.S. has wanted to do in the past. And so that's one of the things, that's one of the kickbacks why they get so much money. But at the same time, I mean, there's always a question of, people will sometimes debate whether the dog wags the tail or the tail wags the dog. But, and I think here you can see that the U.S. feels its interests are served in the region by the Israeli military, although at the same time it makes the U.S. interest sometimes somewhat threatened. But the Saudi Arabia, for instance, is no friend of the Palestinians, and that's where the big other U.S. partner is interested in. And so, and with that should throw the whole concern about Islamic extremism out the window, because if you were genuinely concerned about Islamic extremism, you would think that you wouldn't be really close with the birthplace of Wahhabism, right? So, anyway, that's just my little 2 cents.
Thank you. Chad, you have a comment?
No, I believe you mentioned the fact that one reason Mrs. Warner, our best friend, says that impact divides our congressmen.
And
I'm glad you brought that up, because we're talking a little bit about that in Seattle.
I was just curious, if you went to, go to Windsor, United Methodist Church, if you went there and passed out a little poll, who should we be more supportive of, I bet most people would say Israel.
Oh, sure.
And it's like, how do we, because I thought the United Methodist Church had really been working on this for a while, but yet I don't think we don't ever talk about it in our church,
No.
in current events or something.
We don't. It's that same story, the narrative is never told.
Christine,
Yes.
you want to talk about your experience with introducing the resolution, or we'll handle it? Okay, as to why it's difficult to get Baptist church or any church to talk about it.
Still a little disgusted with Bishop Trimble. That doesn't go outside of this room. Eloise and I and several other people, first Kathleen had helped us. We worked on a resolution to divest for the Iowa Annual Conference. Just look at our funds and see if in fact any of them were in those 3 companies. And we wrote this resolution, we submitted it on time, we were all prepared to speak to it on the floor of annual conference, and when it was time for it to come up, the bishop stood up and said he was ruling it out of order, and that was the end of the discussion. Now, in my mind, it was because it was a hot topic, and that is not what they said. They said that we did not include the money issue. And that it would take staff time and money to look at divestment, and that we should have included that in our resolution. So, yeah, we were floored, actually. I think that we were shut down before we even had a chance to talk.
I was just going to add real quick that Israel has nuclear weapons. Those 4 words are, you cannot say that if you're Democrat or Republican or if you're in the Macedonia. Israel has nuclear weapons. And I don't know if this will make you feel better or worse, but UN General Assembly resolutions on Israel are generally 191 to 3, 188 to 4. Usually the New York Times will say that the international community is divided, but so I don't know if that makes you feel better or worse, but on that issue, the United States is really an outlier in the world. I mean, we're sort of off on our own planet on a lot of issues, but this one we really are if you look at General Assembly votes.
Dave?
I think part of it has been answered by just the revelation we heard. What is the progress of BDS within the United Methodist community?
Oh, well, these banks, the Board of Pensions and Health Benefits has divested from these 5 Israeli banks. We spoke to our delegates who will be going to General Conference. When did we do that, Eloise?
In October, I think, sometime.
Okay. Well, we did a little presentation. They gave us a half hour of their time for those who were going to, which was really amazing. But when we finished, we heard comments like, well, those Palestinians killed a lot of Israeli children. And, you know, the same old line that you always hear. So, and we'll never know how they vote, because, you know, their votes will be mixed in with everybody else's. But if you know someone who is a Iowa Annual Conference, General Conference delegate, you need to be talking to them and talking to them about divesting, so that they know what you're thinking. Gotta have a voice.
But we also need to be aware that I believe it's the board of senators, correct me if I'm wrong, is circulating a video encouraging people not to vote for divestment who are general conference delegates. And this is the central conference people, international people. They are being groomed to vote against divestment.
It's an uphill battle, I'm telling you. Are you pointing at me?
I'm saying I think we should vote.
Yes. Please tell us what we can do. Tell me what to do, Kathleen.
I don't know that I have that, but thank you. That was a wonderful presentation. I will say we have been doing these kind of presentations, maybe not as good, but we've been doing these presentations for many years. And we often see the same people, so we're delighted. We have a broader group here, and we're really delighted to see that. But it counts if you act. And what I want you to know is there are things you can do. One of the things is right now in the Iowa legislature, there is a bill to sanction those who are working on BDS. That means if you care about this, if this is important to you, what you saw, you need to be calling your senators. I put on the tables two things. One, please sign the list. If we have your contact information, just give us your name. If we don't have your contact information, give us your contact information. And we'll make sure you're updated on this piece at the legislature. I'll talk a little more about that at the end, because I want to tell you there's other things you can do. Just like Grace opened their church to us here, your church, your meeting, your club can open your doors to Christine, John, other people doing this kind of work. They can hear these stories, and they have to act on them. You can support the Palestinian economy. As Christine pointed out, their economy is always under strife from Israel. They can't get their products to market. We're selling Palestinian fair trade olive oil because it's so hard to get it out. And I had the opportunity to be in Palestine at the time of their Harvest Festival. It was an amazing, people were so excited, and I think you will have experienced that too, to have people from the outside come and see them and believe that somebody cares. So the day we were going to go help with the olive harvest, all I did was sit under a tree with a grandma, and we talked about our grandchildren. And that's all they needed. They needed to know somebody cared. A young girl came down all excited to tell us about taking her test for college the next day. And she was studying English, and she wanted to read us some. And she just thanked us. I mean, you feel bad. It's so little. And she thanked us and thanked us for being there. So, telling these stories is critically important. Supporting the economy. First United Methodist Church sells olive oil. There's a group that we work with that sells Pelcraft, sells wood products, olive wood products. We sell, we've been doing it for several years, fair trade. So I was amazed too with the idea of fair trade. They are attentive, as struggling as they are. They're attentive to fair trade. So we sell fair trade Palestinian olive oil. Again, when I was there, I mean, I'll probably never stop selling olive oil. I'll sell it from my home because while I was there at the festival, young women, young men were called up to receive scholarship money that came out of the sale of those items. It seems like a small part, but when you see these young people are getting their scholarship money, It's so extremely rewarding. So 3 things so far. We'll talk more about the legislation in the Iowa legislature. Invite speakers to your community. Support the economy. And there's a group that Christine, Eloise, myself, Mary Capone, maybe 2 other people in here are part of, called the Middle East Peace Education Project. And we sort of facilitate and help move these events around central Iowa or eastern Iowa when we're given the opportunity. And we invite you to be part of that and to help us plan, strategize. What's missing? What's new? What do we need to be telling people? How can you help us design an announcement or a flyer? A couple of things we have coming up. And yes, these cards are here. Please grab them. There's 2 different cards. One has on the back information about U.S. tax dollars going to Israel. We were given 3-point-something billion. Obama has raised that to 4-point-something billion a year to Israel to continue their illegal and oppressive occupation. So you can help us with that campaign. We're doing a new event called No Way to Treat a Child. And there's information here about that. And pins, and you're welcome to them. I have a lot of pins here. But we love to speak at your church, at your meeting, wherever. We'd love you to be part of this campaign. Because again, as Christine said, children as young as 8 can be detained. And they can be held, I think you said 30 days or 60 days. We're going to be showing a film that talks about 4 young people, 16 years old or something, who were held for 6 months. And they were beaten. So we're going to do this campaign because we think people who aren't paying attention to other aspects might care when it's children. So we want you to be a part of that. And if you work with us on our Middle East Peace Education Project, we think that'd be great. Do what you can to support the BDS movement. It's awesome what the United Methodist Church is doing. Contact your reps. Presbyterians have done it. They're having their 4-year meeting or 3-year meeting, whatever, right around the time the Methodists are. They have some good language. They're being attacked, and whether they can hang on to it is in question. So, you know, whether if you're not a Methodist, if you're a Presbyterian, jump on that bandwagon. Quakers have done it. We've divested elements from the Quaker process. So there's a big role for that. And travel to the region. There's lots of opportunities, but don't just go with any group. You know, the Israel lobby takes our representatives, but they don't show them the whole story. You know, we've had speakers here from Palestine, and as Christine said just last week, but some time ago we had somebody from a place called Tent of Nations. He's got this big rock out in front that says we refuse to be enemies. He's a Christian struggling to hold on to his land that's been in his family since 1906 or something like that. So he talks about people come, but they go to look at the dead stones. Come and see us. Come and see the living stones of Palestine. So we can certainly provide people with information about what are the best ways to go there and make sure you see the whole story. So that's 5 things I mentioned, and one other piece I want to mention. Jewish Voice for Peace is speaking out on this. And we're going to have people, Jewish Voice for Peace here in Des Moines on the 8th, March 8th. We haven't put together what it is or where it is, but you'll be invited. And if you have questions about, but we never hear another voice, they're going to talk about their voice and their efforts to build peace in the region and a justice for Palestine. One of the members of Jewish Voice for Peace, whom I just love, and he's actually been in this meeting before, Mark Braverman, he talks about, yes, I know you Christians, you feel guilt. Well, you know what? Get over it. Because if you don't, 60 years from now, or now, 70 years from now, you're going to be saying, I'm sorry to the Palestinians because you didn't stand up. That's it.
When I spoke to the bishop, he asked me what BDS was. You mentioned BDS a moment ago. I don't know if people know what that is.
Thank you.
And tell them about what this bill will do in the Senate.
Exactly. Thank you. Yeah, I'm going to pass this out. And you know what? You fooled me, folks. I was not expecting this many of you here. So if you give it somebody else to stick with. And on the tables, so funny, I'll do this back. I put this, which is about BDS, boycott, divestment, and sanctions. Some of you will remember that. Some of you will remember that from South Africa. Others will remember boycott from the civil rights movement. Boycott's an honorable and historical way the public brings change. So boycott, divestment, and sanctions came from inside Palestine. The Palestinian people. The Palestinian people tired of governments being silent in the face of their oppression, their murder, their walls, the destruction of their economy, the detention of their children. They took it upon themselves to call on the world. There's a beautiful statement. It's a Kairos response statement. It's a Kairos document, which says this is the moment. And many, many churches have signed on to this Kairos document, saying we stand with the Palestinian people in their call for boycott, divestment, and sanction. Now we have to put that standing into action by giving resolutions in our churches and our meetings and so forth. But what I want to tell you about what's happening at the Iowa legislature right now, there's an anti-BDS bill before the Iowa legislature. Why is the Iowa legislature going after a grassroots international movement, human rights movement? And that's one of the questions we're asking. It's already passed out of the House of Representatives. It's in the Senate. We're doing heavy, heavy campaigning. But as they said, and this is also why this continues to be an issue, they said very clearly and specifically, we are getting clobbered. The Jewish Federation has done a great job of getting their people out. Maybe we can't match that, but we've got to do a great job of getting out what we can. And what I have on here is telephone numbers for you representatives, talking points. The ACLU has already said this is unconstitutional, but they probably assume nobody's going to challenge them. It's not an easy enterprise to challenge the state government. But the ACLU has said it's unconstitutional. The Bill of Rights Defense Committee has said it's unconstitutional. So many of us are going to be at the Capitol Monday. We're going to meet about 11 in the cafeteria. Please join us. And if you sign the sheets, we'll make sure you get all the updated information, the talking points. Jewish Voice for Peace, we have a statement put together by one of our local attorneys talking about the civil liberties, the First Amendment stuff, and several organizations are signing on to that, including Jewish Voice for Peace and American Friends Service Committee, and we'll be talking with other people about what groups can sign on. So I guess go ahead, Brian.
This week, the whole individual senator right now is just down at the bottom of the page that she handed out. You'll see 3 email addresses, and Joachim Mike Brownsville and Matt McCoy. No, that is the typical way that you address your senator. If you know your senator's first name and last name, you put the first name, a period, a last name, and then add Legis Iowa Go. And that will get to them. And before Monday, and they will read it. That is, and make it as personal as you can. And we don't want form letters, but we want a personal voice that's saying why you think this should not be passed by the Senate. You can tell Republicans this if your senator is Republican. This is really a nonpartisan issue.
Truly.
Because they're against both parties.
And does everybody know that Brian and Rita are lobbyists for the United Methodist Church, and they are signed on against this bill, and they're working with us on this, so that's very exciting. I would also say, if you don't know who your legislator is, there's also a link at the bottom that gives you how to find your senator. So I think that's about all I have, but I'd definitely be happy to hear some questions and comments. Deb?
Is there anything being done about municipal investment in Iowa?
I don't think so. I've not heard anything. And partly, we know some of this is being done in Minnesota. It's a matter of we need more people working on this to move some different pieces forward. So that's a really good piece, I'd like to see.
I can just add to that a little bit. One of the people on the AFSC delegations from Phoenix, and she's been working with the Phoenix City Council to divest from Veolia, which is a company that has heavy activity in Israel and its settlements. It's a security company, and so that's these local municipal investment campaigns that are happening around the country. I know there's a lot of action in Portland, Oregon. It'd be great to take a look at our Iowa municipalities and see what if there are companies that our cities are invested in that we should divest from.
And these sheets, if you don't have one, I have a couple left. These are the action steps, so if you don't have one, please come and grab one.
Also, if your church has had investments, you need to look at how your church is investing their own money. I know at First Church we have talked to our people, we've made it very clear we are not to invest in any of those companies, and we didn't have, luckily we didn't have anything there, but we would have pulled out. So they continue to keep watch on our money so that it's not invested in any of those companies. So if you have, you know, an endowment at your church, take a look.
You know, there are many more things, but I would just say, you know, we need to hear from you, we need to be in touch. There's certainly some of the things is challenging the presidential candidates, your Congress people, your House of Representatives, both national and state. There's no reason, and I will say that we're getting some, you know, some positive support, and I'm not just going to say they're going to vote the right way, to the idea of really pushing back on, this does not belong in the Iowa legislature. This anti-sanctions bill does not belong there. And it's a First Amendment issue. So we hope you'll be a part of the campaign, and please sign our sign-up sheet. If the sign-up sheet hasn't arrived to you, let me know. Somebody please move it forward. Eloise. Oh yeah, with all those snacks back there, there's olive oil and good bread. There's got satire, Palestinian or Middle Eastern seasoning. Try some of that and then stop by and buy some olive oil to support the Palestinian economy. You can also, you know, get your church to do it. Like First United Methodist.
I had a little nip of that. It's good.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Illinois and Tennessee, I know for sure.
Just two.
It's been more than that, and it's considered in other states too. So.
There's also in the United Kingdom just passed an anti-BDS law, so it is in effect there.
So this is a nationwide push.
It is.
By who?
By, well, the state of Israel considers this BDS an existential threat.
Tell me again,
So,
I'm stupid. What does BDS stand for?
boycott, divestment, and sanctions.
And who are they?
That's a movement started in 2005
In Israel?
by Palestinians. A Palestinian call for the international community to divest from companies that profit from the illegal occupation of Israel.
All right.
So yeah, I mean it's a
Pull their
movement.
money out from those companies.
It's an international movement.
So far, it's been passed in Illinois.
Tennessee, I know, and other states have. I think there are other states too.
And United Kingdom, I have seen that. So
Yeah, against this.
yeah.
Right.
They want to severely penalize any entity that is involved with the BDS.
Right.
Good presentation.
Okay. Good.
That will do it for tonight. I'm going to go ahead and take my stream down.
There's a lot to
I'll
say.
give-
You know, it's hard to
I'll
kind
put this
of
up
narrow
on
it down.
YouTube when I go home. So
No, I started it.
I can get over
It's
to
a library book. I took it back.
the event on
But yeah,
Monday.
on Truman. Yeah.
Any future events along this line, plus anything else that comes up, I'll bring them to you. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the stream.